When 27-year-old mathematician Alan Turing arrived at the mysterious Bletchley Park estate in September 1939, he carried with him a mind that would help change the course of World War II. The Nazis believed their Enigma machine created unbreakable codes, protecting their most vital military communications with mathematical precision that seemed impossible to defeat. But Alan possessed something the German engineers had never anticipated: a revolutionary understanding of mechanical computation that would give birth to the modern computer age. The secret he was about to unlock would save millions of lives, but the personal cost would be devastating. Could you sacrifice everything for a victory the world might never know about? Bletchley Park looked nothing like a top-secret military installation. The Victorian mansion, surrounded by peaceful countryside 50 miles north of London, appeared to be exactly what its cover story claimed: a government communications school where civil servants learned radio procedures. But beneath this innocent facade lay Britain's most classified operation, where some of the nation's brightest minds were working to penetrate the deepest secrets of Nazi Germany. The Enigma machine represented German engineering at its most sophisticated. Looking like an oversized typewriter, the device used rotating wheels called rotors to scramble messages into seemingly random combinations of letters. Each rotor contained 26 electrical contacts that could be positioned in millions of different configurations. When a German operator pressed the letter key, electrical current would flow through all the rotors, emerge as a completely different letter, and light up on a display board. The mathematical complexity was staggering. A standard 3-rotor Enigma machine had over 150 trillion possible settings, and the Germans changed these settings every day using codebooks that specified rotor positions, ring settings, and plugboard connections. Even if Allied codebreakers could intercept German radio transmissions, the encrypted messages appeared to be nothing more than meaningless strings of random letters. German military commanders trusted Enigma completely, using it to coordinate everything from U-boat attacks in the Atlantic to tank movements on the Russian front. They believed their communications were absolutely secure, giving them a crucial advantage in planning and executing military operations. Could you tackle a mathematical puzzle that seemed to have more solutions than there are atoms in the universe? Alan's approach to the Enigma problem was fundamentally different from traditional code-breaking methods. While most cryptographers focused on analyzing patterns in encrypted text, Alan understood that the real weakness lay in the machine's mechanical limitations and the human operators who used it. Enigma machines, despite their mathematical sophistication, were still mechanical devices subject to physical constraints. The rotors moved in predictable patterns, advancing one position with each letter typed. More importantly, the machine had a crucial limitation that German engineers considered a feature, but Alan recognized as a fatal flaw. No letter could ever be encoded as itself. This meant that if a German operator pressed the letter A, the machine would never display A as the encrypted output. This seemingly minor detail provided Alan with his first mathematical foothold in attacking the cipher. But Alan's real breakthrough came from understanding that the Enigma's greatest strength, its daily key changes, could also become a weakness if approached correctly. German operators had to transmit certain routine messages every day: weather reports, supply requests, status updates that followed predictable formats and contained recurring phrases. These routine transmissions, which German commanders considered harmless administrative overhead, became Alan's weapons against the cipher. By analyzing the timing, length, and context of these messages, he could begin to identify patterns that would be impossible to detect in random military communications. The mathematical principles Alan developed would later become fundamental concepts in computer science, but in 1940, he was essentially inventing these ideas from scratch, while working under wartime pressure that made every day's delay potentially catastrophic. But the real shock came when Alan realized the true scope of German communications that Enigma protected. Intelligence reports from across Europe painted a terrifying picture of German military capabilities. Enigma wasn't just protecting tactical communications between local units, it was the nervous system of the entire Nazi war machine. U-boat commanders received their hunting instructions through Enigma. Luftwaffe pilots learned their bombing targets from Enigma messages. Wehrmacht generals coordinated massive offensives using Enigma encrypted communications. Breaking the cipher wouldn't just provide isolated pieces of intelligence. It would give the Allies a window directly into German military planning at the highest levels. They could learn about U-boat patrol routes before the submarines even left port. They could discover Luftwaffe bombing targets in time to prepare defenses or evacuate civilians. Most incredibly, they might be able to read German battle plans before enemy commanders even issued orders to their troops. The potential intelligence value was almost beyond calculation, but so was the risk. If the Germans ever suspected that Enigma had been compromised, they would immediately change their encryption systems, and the advantage would be lost forever. Every decision about how to use Enigma intelligence would require careful balance between immediate military benefit and long-term strategic security.
Alan understood that he wasn't just working on an abstract mathematical problem. He was designing a weapon that could determine whether democracy or fascism would control the future of human civilization. What would you sacrifice to gain such power when the stakes included the survival of everything you believed in? The working conditions at Bletchley Park were unlike anything in Alan's previous academic experience. The urgency was constant and overwhelming. German U-boats were sinking Allied merchant ships faster than they could be replaced, threatening to starve Britain into submission. The Luftwaffe was preparing for massive bombing campaigns that could destroy British cities and industrial capacity. The Wehrmacht was planning invasions that could eliminate Britain's remaining allies and leave the island nation facing Nazi Germany alone. Every day that Enigma remained unbroken meant more Allied deaths and a stronger German position. The pressure affected everyone at Bletchley Park differently. Some thrived on the intellectual challenge. Others cracked under the knowledge that their work directly determined how many soldiers would die in upcoming battles. Alan responded to this pressure by working 18-hour days, subsisting on coffee and sandwiches while filling blackboards with mathematical calculations that seemed incomprehensible to his colleagues. His office became a chaos of mechanical diagrams, statistical tables, and theoretical frameworks that gradually coalesced into the first systematic approach to breaking Enigma. The breakthrough came from an unexpected direction. Polish mathematicians, working in secret before the war, had made significant progress in understanding Enigma's mechanical operations. When Polish intelligence escaped to Britain in 1939, they brought with them detailed knowledge of Enigma's internal structure and early code-breaking techniques that had worked against simpler versions of the machine. But the German military had upgraded Enigma significantly since the Polish successes, adding complexity that made their methods obsolete. Alan's task was to build on Polish foundations while developing entirely new approaches that could handle the enhanced security measures. You won't believe the mechanical marvel that Alan designed to automate the code-breaking process. Alan's most revolutionary insight was that breaking Enigma required mechanical assistance. The mathematical calculations involved in testing different rotor settings were too complex and time-consuming for human code breakers to perform manually. He needed a machine that could test thousands of possible Enigma settings automatically, discarding impossible combinations and flagging potential solutions for human analysis. The result was the bomb, an electromechanical device that stood over 6 feet tall and contained dozens of rotating drums that simulated Enigma rotor movements. The machine could test Enigma settings at incredible speed, running through combinations that would take human calculators months to complete. But the bomb was more than just a fast calculator. It represented the first practical application of concepts that would later become fundamental to computer science. Alan had to develop logical frameworks for describing how machines could perform abstract reasoning, creating programming concepts that wouldn't be fully understood by the broader scientific community for decades. The first bomb became operational in March 1940, but initial results were disappointing. The machine could identify potential Enigma settings, but distinguishing correct solutions from false positives still required extensive human analysis that consumed precious time.
Alan realized that the problem wasn't mechanical, but logical. He needed better methods for identifying the characteristics that distinguished genuine German messages from random text generated by incorrect Enigma settings. Could you develop artificial intelligence concepts 60 years before computers were powerful enough to implement them? Alan's solution involved what he called cribs, educated guesses about the content of German messages based on routine communication patterns, known phrases, and contextual clues. If British intelligence suspected that a particular message contained a weather report, Alan could use the standard format of German weather broadcasts to test potential Enigma settings. The process required incredible attention to detail and deep understanding of German military procedures. Alan studied German communication protocols, learned to recognize the writing styles of individual radio operators, and memorized the routine phrases that German units used for standard administrative messages. This human intelligence work was as crucial as the mathematical analysis. The bomb could test mechanical possibilities, but only human insight could provide the contextual knowledge necessary to distinguish meaningful messages from random character strings. The combination of mechanical computation and human analysis created a code-breaking system more powerful than either component could achieve alone. By the summer of 1940, Bletchley Park was regularly reading German messages, though the process remained difficult and time-consuming. The first major success came during the Battle of Britain, when intercepted Luftwaffe communications revealed German bombing targets and allowed RAF fighters to be positioned for maximum effectiveness. The intelligence advantage was so significant that some German commanders suspected they were facing a much larger British Air Force than actually existed. Wait a moment. What moral dilemma would test Alan's commitment to absolute secrecy about ultra-intelligence?
The ethical complexities of using Enigma intelligence became apparent during the Coventry bombing crisis in November 1940. British intelligence intercepted German messages indicating that the Luftwaffe was planning a massive bombing raid, codenamed Operation Moonlight Sonata. But the target city wasn't initially clear from the encrypted communications. When additional decrypts confirmed that Coventry would be the target, British leaders faced an impossible choice. Warning the city would save civilian lives, but might reveal to the Germans that Enigma had been broken. If the Nazis changed their encryption systems, the intelligence advantage would be lost, and potentially millions more people would die in prolonged warfare. Alan was not directly involved in this decision, but he understood its implications perfectly. The code-breaking work he was performing would inevitably create situations where immediate humanitarian concerns conflicted with long-term strategic necessity. The decision was made to allow the Coventry bombing to proceed while secretly evacuating only the most critical military personnel and equipment. The city suffered devastating damage, with over 500 civilian deaths and the historic cathedral destroyed completely. Alan later wrote that understanding the human cost of maintaining ultra-security was one of the most difficult aspects of his war work. Every successful decrypt potentially saved lives, but every decision to preserve the secret of Enigma's compromise meant accepting casualties that might have been prevented. The psychological burden of carrying such knowledge while being unable to share it with anyone outside Bletchley Park affected everyone involved in the Ultra program. But perhaps none more than Alan, whose mathematical precision made him acutely aware of the statistical relationship between intelligent success and human survival. Unbelievable as it seems, Alan's greatest triumph would come from the most unlikely source: German overconfidence. By 1941, German success in the early years of the war had bred a dangerous complacency about communication security. Military commanders, confident that Enigma was unbreakable,
began using it for increasingly detailed messages that provided British intelligence with unprecedented insight into Nazi strategic planning. The most valuable intelligence came from high-level communications between German military headquarters and field commanders. These messages often contained complete operational plans, including troop movements, supply requirements, and timing for major offensives. The intelligence windfall reached its peak during the planning for Operation Barbarossa, Germany's invasion of the Soviet Union. Intercepted Enigma messages revealed German troop concentrations, supply preparations, and even the planned start date for the massive offensive. British intelligence faced another moral dilemma. Should they warn Stalin about the impending German attack? Sharing the intelligence might help the Soviet Union prepare its defenses, but it would also reveal British code-breaking capabilities to a potential future enemy. Winston Churchill chose to warn Stalin through indirect channels, but the Soviet leader dismissed British intelligence as attempts to drag the USSR into war with Germany. The Germans achieved complete tactical surprise when Barbarossa began on June 22, 1941, but British intelligence continued reading German communications throughout the campaign. The Eastern Front intelligence proved invaluable in understanding German military capabilities in strategic thinking. As the Wehrmacht advanced into Soviet territory, Enigma decrypts revealed supply shortages, tactical problems, and growing doubts among German commanders about the campaign's ultimate success. What you've seen is nothing. The most crucial battle would be fought not on land or sea, but in the depths of the Atlantic Ocean. The Battle of the Atlantic represented the ultimate test of Allen's Enigma achievements. German U-boats, coordinated through Enigma communications, were sinking Allied merchant ships at a rate that threatened to cut Britain's lifeline to North America. If the submarine campaign succeeded, Britain would be starved into surrender, regardless of military victories elsewhere. The naval version of Enigma used by German U-boats was more complex than the standard military version, with additional security measures that made Allen's existing methods partially obsolete. The Kriegsmarine changed its codes more frequently, used different procedures for key distribution, and employed additional encryption layers that significantly increased the mathematical difficulty of code breaking. Allen responded by developing enhanced bomb machines, specifically designed to handle naval Enigma. These devices were larger, faster, and more sophisticated than their predecessors, but they required captured German materials to provide cribs and contextual information necessary for successful attacks on the cipher. The breakthrough came from Royal Navy operations that captured intact U-boats along with their Enigma machines and codebooks. The most famous incident occurred in May 1941 when HMS Bulldog captured U-110 and retrieved a complete set of naval Enigma materials. With this intelligence windfall, Allen's team began reading German U-boat communications regularly, providing convoy routing information that dramatically reduced merchant ship losses. The mathematical elegance of the solution impressed even Allen. German submarine commanders were unknowingly broadcasting their positions and intentions to the very forces they were trying to destroy. Yet could such intellectual triumph compensate for the personal isolation that Allen's secret work demanded? The nature of ultra-intelligence work created profound personal challenges for everyone at Bletchley Park. Allen and his colleagues were sworn to absolute secrecy about their activities, unable to share the significance of their work with family, friends, or even other government officials not directly involved in the program. This isolation was particularly difficult for Allen, whose academic background had emphasized open collaboration and publication of research results. The mathematical techniques he was developing represented revolutionary advances in logic and computation, but he couldn't discuss them with anyone outside the small circle of Bletchley Park mathematicians. The secrecy also affected his personal relationships. Allen's colleagues knew him as brilliant but eccentric, obsessed with mechanical problems and abstract mathematical concepts that seemed disconnected from the urgent military realities surrounding them. Few understood that his apparent detachment masked an acute awareness of how many lives depended on his daily work. The pressure of maintaining such secrecy while working under constant time pressure took a psychological toll that would affect Allen for the rest of his life. He developed habits of extreme privacy and difficulty trusting others that would later contribute to personal tragedies in the post-war period. But during the war years, Allen's focus remained absolutely fixed on the mathematical challenges of penetrating German communications. His intellectual energy was channeled entirely into developing new code-breaking techniques, improving bomb bay efficiency, and staying ahead of German security enhancements. And then, just as victory seemed assured, the Germans made a change that threatened to undo everything Allen had accomplished. In February 1942, German naval intelligence introduced a new version of Enigma with 4 rotors instead of 3, instantly increasing the mathematical complexity of code-breaking by a factor of 26. The change was implemented specifically to counter suspected Allied intelligence successes, though the Germans still didn't realize that Enigma itself had been compromised. The 4-rotor Enigma created what cryptographers call a blackout period, when previously readable German communications became impenetrable again. U-boat attacks immediately became more effective as convoy routing could no longer benefit from intercepted German communications. Allen's response demonstrated the intellectual flexibility that made him uniquely valuable to the British war effort. Instead of simply scaling up existing methods, he redesigned the entire approach to handle the increased complexity. The new 4-rotor bombs were engineering marvels that pushed 1940s technology to its limits. But the real breakthrough came from Allen's recognition that mathematical elegance could overcome mechanical limitations. By developing more sophisticated statistical analysis techniques, he could extract information from partial solutions and make educated guesses about complete Enigma settings based on fragmentary evidence. The 4-rotor problem was solved by December 1942, restoring Allied intelligence advantages at a crucial moment in the Battle of the Atlantic. German U-boat losses increased dramatically as convoy escorts could again anticipate submarine positions and coordinate effective counterattacks. Suddenly, a new threat emerged that would test whether Allen's innovations could adapt to completely different challenges. As the war progressed, German intelligence became increasingly sophisticated about communication security. New encryption systems were developed for different types of messages, creating multiple mathematical challenges that required different solutions. The most complex challenge came from high-level German communications that used manual encryption methods combined with Enigma mechanical encryption. These super-enciphered messages required breaking 2 different codes in sequence, a mathematical problem that seemed to exceed human capabilities. Allen's solution involved creating what he called decision trees, logical frameworks that could guide human analysts through complex decryption processes by eliminating impossible combinations and highlighting the most promising approaches. These techniques represented early applications of concepts that would later become central to artificial intelligence research. The success of these advanced methods provided Allied intelligence with access to German strategic communications at the highest levels, including messages between Hitler's headquarters and field commanders throughout Europe. This intelligence proved crucial in planning D-Day and other major Allied operations. Could such mathematical genius truly change the outcome of global warfare through pure intellectual achievement? By 1944, Allen's code-breaking innovations had fundamentally altered the balance of World War II. German military communications, once completely secure, had become transparent to Allied intelligence analysts. The psychological advantage was as important as the tactical benefits. German commanders were essentially fighting blind, while their opponents could read their most secret plans. The D-Day invasion demonstrated the ultimate value of ultra-intelligence. Allied planners knew German defensive positions, troop strength, and even Hitler's personal instructions to his commanders. The successful deception campaign that convinced the Germans to expect the invasion at Calais rather than Normandy was possible only because Allied intelligence could monitor German reactions to false information. Statistical analyses conducted after the war suggested that ultra-intelligence shortened the conflict by at least 2 years and saved millions of lives by enabling more effective Allied military operations. The economic value of preventing prolonged warfare was incalculable, but the human cost of earlier victory was measurable in statistics that Allen, with his mathematical precision, would have appreciated. But perhaps the most important long-term impact of Allen's work wasn't military, but technological. The concepts he developed at Bletchley Park, mechanical computation, logical programming, and automated reasoning, became the foundation for the computer revolution that would transform human civilization in the decades following the war. Yet the personal cost of these achievements would prove devastating when the war ended, and secrecy requirements prevented Allen from receiving the recognition his contributions deserved. After Germany's surrender in May 1945, Allen's wartime work remained classified at the highest levels of government secrecy. He could not publish papers about his mathematical innovations, could not discuss his role in Allied victory, and could not even hint at the significance of his contributions to ending the war. The transition to peacetime academic work was difficult for someone whose intellectual development had been shaped by the urgency and importance of wartime codebreaking. Allen attempted to continue his research into mechanical computation, but without the resources and official support that had made his wartime achievements possible. More tragically, the same government that had depended on his genius during the war would later persecute him for his homosexuality, leading to chemical castration and ultimately his death in 1954. The man who had saved millions of lives and helped preserve democratic civilization was destroyed by the prejudices of the society he had protected. The irony was profound and heartbreaking. Alan Turing, whose mathematical insights had been crucial to defeating fascism, became a victim of intolerance in the free world he had helped secure. Today, Alan Turing is recognized as one of the most important figures in both World War II history and the development of modern computer science. His theoretical work on mechanical computation laid the foundation for digital technology that now shapes every aspect of human life. The Turing test, his framework for evaluating artificial intelligence, remains relevant as computer scientists work to create machines that can truly think. His vision of universal computing machines anticipated the personal computer revolution by decades. But perhaps his most important legacy is the reminder that intellectual courage can be as decisive as physical bravery in determining the outcome of human conflicts. Alan Turing proved that mathematics, applied with genius and determination, could defeat military force and preserve civilization itself. Would you have found the same dedication to solving impossible problems when the survival of everything you valued depended on your success? His story demonstrates that individual brilliance, supported by teamwork and national commitment, can overcome seemingly insurmountable challenges and change the course of human history. Share your thoughts in the comments below and subscribe to discover more incredible stories of genius, courage, and sacrifice from history's most crucial moments.